Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this show. This is a big episode, Week 7 Instant Reactions. It was a heck of a week, heck of a day in college football and in sports. Some people say, I'm not going to name who says this, but some people say you only know that you're in the good old days when you've already left them. Right now, these are the good old days. These Saturdays in October that we just get to sit back and watch just pure cinema in college football week after week after week. It's a gift, and frankly, we don't deserve this gift. This gift is so awesome. And it was another phenomenal weekend, another phenomenal day. We're going to get to everything about this weekend. So much happened. So many rivalries went down. We had Red River. We had the oldest rivalry in the South. A lot of great stuff happened in those. A couple top 15 teams were upset by unranked teams. I'm here to tell you that some of those were not as surprising as you may think. Teams got biggest wins in program history. We had some amazing finishes, by the way, that not a lot of people are talking about. The Big 12, chaos, as we expected it to be. The SEC is turning into chaos as well, which is so much fun. The Group of 5 race is really heating up. A lot of stuff happened today in that. Just an average college football weekend. The amount of chaos, the amount of craziness, the amount of wild, illogical things that happened this weekend are just a reminder of what's so great about college football. And the fact that a weekend as crazy as this is normal in this sport just shows how great this sport is. I mean, this sport just brings me so much joy. If you're watching this, it probably brings you joy too, unless you're my loving mom and loving grandmother who find joy in college football, but maybe not as much as some of the other more loyal fans. Not to diss them, of course. They're phenomenal. I love them very much. But we're going to get into it. We're not going to waste any more time because we've got a lot to get to. As I'd said, Lance is showcasing some of the scores. Make sure the pillow's not blocking him. Pumpkins, of course. Cabo Bob's Cup is back with the Robert Mug. So, they're back, which is just phenomenal. Will is asleep right now or trying to go to sleep. I think he might be watching a movie, but he'll be back next episode, I'm sure. We'll miss him, but we got to press on. First thing we're going to talk about, and if you don't know, if you're unfamiliar with Instant Reaction podcasts, the first game that I talk about is big because it's what I believe is the biggest story in college football this weekend. And then I sort of try and have the second be the second biggest story and third biggest story and so on and so forth. But the first game that I have to talk about, because it was so crazy to me that this happened. I thought that there was no way this was going to happen. And just the wildness of this rebuild, of this turnaround for this program is unbelievable. And this was sort of the catalyst of it all. But the Indiana Hoosiers, the number 7 ranked Indiana Hoosiers, the undefeated Indiana Hoosiers, the team that has lost the most games in college football history, Indiana Hoosiers, traveled from the Midwest to the Northwest to take on the Oregon Ducks, and they went into Austin Stadium as 7.5-point underdogs and upset the number 3 ranked Ducks. Cinema, just absolute cinema. I mean, I've already used that word this episode, but I have to use it again for this because it was awesome. Just to set up some context for this, if I haven't set up enough already, before this game, before this win against Oregon, Indiana had lost 46 straight games versus AP top 5 opponents. That's a lot of games, 46 straight. Their last win against an AP top 5 opponent was in 1967 against Purdue. So it's been forever. This is definitely the biggest win for Indiana under the Curt Cignetti tenure. I know they've won a lot of big rivalry games. They won 11 games in the regular season last year. But this is the biggest win for Curt Cignetti and Indiana. I totally believe that. Also, you could make an argument, and I would listen to you, and I'd probably say you're right, that this is the biggest win in Indiana Hoosier regular season football history. So, congratulations if you're a Hoosiers fan, if you're from the great state of Indiana, even if you've been to the great state of Indiana before, congratulations on just a heck of a performance and a heck of a win from your football team. I thought this couldn't happen. I picked Oregon to win this game. I thought Oregon was going to win convincingly. I thought Cignetti was going to make it close at the beginning, and Oregon's talent and their domination of the line of scrimmage would pull them away. Literally the complete opposite of what I thought would happen in this game happened. It doesn't make any sense. The first thing I have to touch on, and this is not even the most important thing, but it's what I thought was going to be Indiana's biggest weakness, was their inability to have any control over the game in terms of their own offensive line. That's sort of what happened against Ohio State last year and Notre Dame last year. They couldn't run the ball. Curtis Rook was under a lot of heat all game, and they just didn't have any offensive identity in those two games. But this game, they controlled pretty much the whole game with their offensive line. And they didn't break off like a lot of huge runs down the field. They only ran the ball for 111 yards, but that's way more than they ran it against Ohio State. And if you discount garbage time, it's much better than they did against Notre Dame last year. So they sort of just had more of a control over this game. And also, we talked about on the preview podcast how good Oregon's defensive line is. And you know this is true if you've watched Oregon this year. If you watched the Penn State game, Mateo Uiagalelei and Bear Alexander are just flying through guards and making so many plays in the backfield. That was not the case at all in this game. I mean, Indiana, I don't remember if they had a single other negative play and other than the one time they were sacked. I mean, Fernando Mendoza threw the ball nearly 30 times, only took one sack against this Oregon defensive line. That is so impressive to me. They stayed on schedule. They stayed in front of the sticks. It was third and shorts. They really set up for themselves a lot, and that allowed them to convert on most of their third downs. I am so impressed with this Indiana offensive line. I didn't think that I was going to be. I thought that was going to be how Oregon won the game, was their dominance on the defensive line, and Indiana just completely negated that. And if they can do that against Oregon, Oregon's defensive line is one of the best in the country. So if Indiana can negate a defensive line like that, they can pretty much control any defensive line in the country, which is a scary thought for Big Ten folk and even SEC folk if they have to play Indiana down the road in the playoffs. But we will cross that bridge when we get to it. But the most impressive thing, I mean, that was the most shocking thing to me, was their offensive line and how they dominated. The most impressive thing to me that Indiana did was how their defensive line and their front seven, so their linebackers and their defensive line, dominated this game on the other side of the ball. First of all, they had 6 sacks in this game. That's how many times they got home. I've been praising Oregon all season long for their 2 transfer offensive tackles. Isaiah World, and I can't remember the other one's name, but he is even better than Isaiah World. Left and right tackle. They've been so good all year. They dominated Penn State. They have protected Dante Moore insanely well for all of their games up to this point. And Indiana got home 6 times through this offensive line. And a lot of them were really creative blitzes dialed up by Cignetti and this coaching staff. But still, I did not expect Indiana to get more than 2 sacks, and they got home 6 times. Dante Moore was uncomfortable because of the pressure from the defensive line. But as good as the defensive line was, I was more impressed with how amazing these linebackers played. They made so many plays. Specifically, who I'm talking about are, and Indiana plays a lot of 4-3, so that's just 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers. But Aiden Fisher, Elijah Hardy, and Isaiah Jones might be the best linebacker trio in college football, based on how well they played. They're flying around making plays. They each had 8 or more total tackles. They each had a sack. They each had multiple tackles for loss. And Isaiah Jones had an interception. And a lot of what Indiana was running, they didn't really want to run stock man coverage against Oregon because of how good their receivers are. So they ran a lot of zone. And with that zone, when you run that, it's really hard to stop the run. But Aiden Fisher and Elijah Hardy and Isaiah Jones had so much pressure on them, being the linebackers. They had to control the middle of the field against a lot of the RPO stuff Oregon runs, against the run game and against Dante Moore's short passing. And they played so well. They held Oregon to just 81 rushing yards. That's with all the weapons that Oregon has at running back, with De'Aaron Hill, with Noah Whittington, and then also with Dante Moore and his legs. Just 81 rushing yards. They had 111, by the way. I'm crunching the numbers real quick. I believe that's a 30-yard difference in rushing yards that Indiana had an advantage on, which is crazy. And also, they just made plays in the big moments. I mean, at the end of the game, Isaiah Jones had an interception in zone coverage where it was a simple concept for Oregon. They had a slant and then a hitch. And Jones faked going to the slant and ran back towards the hitch and picked off Dante Moore. A guy who is not easy to deceive at all. I mean, Dante Moore's been really good this year, and he just didn't have his short passing game, which took away the rhythm of this offense. So all shout-outs in the world go to those three linebackers and the defensive line of Indiana. They played out of their minds today and really won Indiana this football game. A couple more shout-outs I want to give to two special Indiana players on this offense. Of course, Fernando Mendoza was great, 20 for 31, 215 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. But Fernando Mendoza would not have been nearly as good today if it weren't for Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper. These guys were so good. And we know about Elijah Surratt. He was great last year. But he dominated this game. He had 8 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. Oregon ran a lot of man coverage. Oregon looked at Indiana's receivers, and they looked at their corners, and they said, you know what, we have the talent advantage here. We're going to make Mendoza beat us, and we're going to make these wide receivers beat us in man coverage, and Mendoza's going to have to make perfect throws. And honestly, they executed in terms of what they wanted to do, but Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper were just too good. I mean, Cooper was more of a short game guy. He only had 8.3 yards a catch. But Elijah Surratt, it felt like every time that Indiana needed a big play, whether it was in the red zone or on a third down, they would just put Surratt at the X. And Oregon would play man coverage, and Surratt would beat him, and Fernando Mendoza would throw so many perfect back shoulder throws. This guy's a dog. I mean, Elijah Surratt could not be covered in man coverage today. I think he's 6'3", something like that. But he was so good. So if you're in the Big Ten and you want to run man coverage against Indiana, if you look at this team, you look at their talent profile and their recruiting class, and you say, oh yeah, we can match up with these guys. We can run man coverage. No, you can't. Because Elijah Surratt is too big, he's too strong, and he will make you pay. Really, they were the only two receivers that caught passes today for Fernando Mendoza because they were the only two that were beating man coverage successfully. But just huge shout out to those two guys for winning one-on-one matchups against corners because that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're going against Oregon. The third sort of skill player that I was really impressed with Indiana was the running back, Roman Hemby. And, you know, Hemby's stat line is pretty decent, 19 carries for 70 yards, 3.7 yards a carry. Didn't really break off any explosive runs, but again, he was consistent. And a lot of times, he was getting contacted by linebackers, by Oregon defensive linemen, at or near the line of scrimmage, and then he would just fight for 4 or 5 yards. It was a beautiful thing to watch. And honestly, Roman Hemby is not that big of a dude. I mean, if you watched him today in the red zone, on third and shorts, whatever it may be, you might guess, like, you can tell he's powerful. He doesn't want to go down. He keeps his legs turning. He's only 6 foot, 208 pounds, which is not big. He's no big Daniel Hill or big Josh McCray like those guys, but he is just strong and he wants it. He's got passion. Elijah Surratt, by the way, is 6'2", not 6'3", but that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I believe Indiana is playoff bound. I think them and Ohio State obviously are the clear favorites to make the Big Ten championship game. Indiana's defense looks so good. I mean, just so good. And their toughest game on the schedule after this, we thought was going to be Penn State. Obviously, Penn State is sort of imploding as we speak. But Indiana is set up beautifully to make the playoffs once again. I mean, you could argue that they don't even need to beat Ohio State to get a first-round bye if they wanted to, which is just insanity, by the way. I mean, think of 4 years ago. Just try and send your mind back 4 years, right? A lot of stuff is different. You know, the Pac-12 still exists. Oklahoma and Texas are still in the Big 12. We still have a 4-team playoff. And there's rumored, 2 years in the future, it's not going to be 4-team playoff anymore. We're going to move to 12 teams. And you're thinking, oh, wow, that's going to be fun. It might decrease value of the regular season, but it's going to be fun. Alabama's going to make it every year. Georgia's probably going to make it every year. Ohio State's going to make it every year. But we're going to have some fun teams. We're going to have some new faces in the mix. How many of y'all would have expected 4 years ago that one of the teams that's going to make the first 2 playoffs and be one of the favorites to have a bye, to be a top 4 team in the second year of the 12-team playoffs, would be the Indiana Hoosiers? Nobody would have guessed this. This might be the greatest 2-year rebuild in college football history. And I know that I can't really be speaking on college football history as much as other people. I'm only 19 years old. But at least in my lifetime, I have not seen a coach rebuild a team like Indiana. This is not Texas. This is not LSU, Alabama, Oklahoma, or one of the top tier programs in college football. This is Indiana, the program that has lost the most games in the history of college football. And Curt Cignetti has taken them and has turned them into one of the 10 best programs in college football. Insanity. What he's done at Indiana, it makes no sense. So I have all the respect in the world for Curt Cignetti. If he wants to go out and talk trash, go for it, Curt Cignetti. You have completely earned every honor to talk trash. So please go out there and tell people to Google you. Tell people that you blow out top 25 teams. Please, because you do, and you back it up so incredibly well. The rest of Indiana's schedule, they have a bye week after this. Actually, no, that's not true. They play Michigan State at home after this, and then they play UCLA. UCLA is not a rollover team anymore. They got at Maryland. Maryland doesn't look bad. They have to play at Penn State. I know what it looks like, but that's no gimme. At Penn State is still not going to be a gimme. They still have a lot of talent on that team. If they just fall apart, it'll be a gimme, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'll talk about Penn State more later in the episode. Then they have Wisconsin, who looks terrible right now. Then they have a bye, and then they play at Purdue. Purdue's 2-4. So Indiana will be overwhelming favorites in pretty much every game they play the rest of the year. And then that would probably set them up in a collision course with Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. I am so impressed with Indiana. I'm so happy they won this game. Not that I don't love Oregon. I mean, Oregon is still great. Oregon is going to be fine after this. They still got a great culture. Their offensive line and defensive line are both so good still, which is why it's so crazy that Indiana dominated the line of scrimmage in this game. But Oregon fans need not worry about their future. This is the first regular season game that Oregon has lost as a member of the Big Ten. So it's going to be okay. The playoffs are still in sight. Just move on to next week and keep winning games if you're Oregon at this point. But this weekend is about Indiana and the Hoosiers and getting a huge win. So all the credit goes to Curt Cignetti, the linebackers, the defensive line, the offensive line, Elijah Surratt, and this Indiana team. Well done. That leads us into our next game, our first rivalry game we have to talk about today. The Red River Shootout was this week. This game is always fun. This is sort of what I always mark as sort of the halfway point in the college football season, is when Oklahoma and Texas lace up and play each other in the Cotton Bowl. It's always a blast. I mean, this game is always just so fantastic with the Texas State Fair, the pageantry, everything that goes into it is phenomenal. And this year, Texas wins 23-6 over Oklahoma. They've won 3 of the last 4 against the Sooners. The last 3 times they've won against Oklahoma, it's been by 17 or more points. So right now, the Longhorns kind of own the Sooners, which has not been the case the last 10 years, but it is now. A lot of what happened in this game made sense. And what I mean by that is a lot of what we saw, Will and I sort of thought what was going to happen. And most college football analysts really thought this was going to happen. And that was a lot of really great defense, low scoring. It was 6-3 at halftime. That didn't surprise us at all. It might surprise the casual viewer who says, okay, well, Texas has Arch Manning, and Oklahoma has a guy who was the Heisman favorite at a point in time. Why is this game not more high scoring? The answer is these two defenses are phenomenal, and they really showed that in the first half. So it was 6-3 at halftime. And then I said on the podcast, if you haven't listened to that one, it's okay. It's kind of pointless to go back and listen to it now because the game already happened. But I said, I think it's going to be low scoring, and I think either one of these teams is going to make a special teams play to win the game. Those words literally left my mouth. And I'm never right, guys. Like, I have so many wrong predictions all the time. I thought Auburn was going to beat A&M. But I was right about Texas making a big special teams play to beat Oklahoma. It was Ryan Niblett on a punt return. Questionable missed block in the back call on that play. We'll let it slide. But Texas makes the big special teams play, and they win this game. So all of that stuff, what I just said, that's the part of this game that did make sense. But there were also a few aspects of this game that boggled my mind a little bit, that I didn't think were going to happen, that didn't make much sense to me. First of all, and this is the most obvious thing in my opinion, Texas's offensive line showed up. And not only did they show up, but they were so good in this game. I mean, do we remember Oklahoma against Auburn? Do we remember that game? It was low scoring. It was kind of dirty. You know, Oklahoma scored a couple touchdowns that were questionable. And then towards the end of the game, Auburn took the lead. Mateer went out and took the lead back. And then the Oklahoma defense just absolutely smushed Jackson Arnold. They got 10 sacks in that game. And that Oklahoma front seven, the Oklahoma defensive line, won the football game. And then do we also remember the Texas-Florida game? I mean, Texas's offensive line in that game got smacked. They couldn't run the ball, and Arch Manning had no time to throw the ball all day long. So I see that. I see an Oklahoma defensive line that's been dominant. And I see a Texas offensive line that's been terrible. And logically, when you combine the two, Oklahoma's defensive line should have dominated this game. But it was on the absolute contrary. I mean, Arch Manning dropped back 27 times to pass. He was sacked once. If you had told me that at the beginning of this game, if you told me that before the game started, I would have thought you were lying to me. That Arch Manning would have gotten sacked once. That this Texas offensive line would have only allowed this dominant Brent Venables defensive line to get to Arch Manning one time. So I'm so impressed with that. Also, Texas ran the ball well. That was completely outside of what I thought was possible in this game because of how good Oklahoma's defense has been. And again, Texas could not run the ball in their first big games this year. And Trey Wisner trotted out there and ran it 22 times for 94 yards. He had some explosive run plays. He broke some tackles. And this Texas offensive line looked like they knew what they were doing in this game. So big shout out to the Texas offensive line for stepping up, proving me wrong, proving a lot of college football wrong, and playing a good game. And also, I've gotten a lot of people that I've heard a lot of flack placed on Steve Sarkisian. People saying, well, I've heard Steve Sarkisian is one of the best play callers in college football, but honestly, I don't really see it. I can't really, they've not been very good this year. They've had bad offensive play calling. Well, this game, Steve Sarkisian was great. And you might say 23 points, Robert, that's really not all that great. Are you really going to, prop up Steve Sarkisian for an unimpressive offensive performance? This is what I'm going to raise you. I'm going to raise you third downs. Texas was 10 for 17 on third down. They dominated Oklahoma's defense on third down. And a lot of that goes towards offensive play calling. And a lot of it goes towards Arch Manning, too, making plays on third down. But I think most of third downs goes to the offensive play calling, especially third and shorts, which is a lot of what Texas had. So I always, when I'm seeing Texas offense struggle, in the back of my mind is always, but it's Steve Sarkisian. But I gotta trust him. I gotta trust his play calling. I know it works. We saw it work finally in 2025 for Texas against the best defense, frankly, or the second best defense. I guess Ohio State's the best defense they played. But against one of the best defenses in the SEC, it finally clicked. One sack allowed, I already talked about that. Wisner, 22 for 24, and 10 for 17 on third down. And I will say, unshockingly, Oklahoma's style of offense finally caught back up to them. And what I mean by that, in their first few games, Oklahoma could not establish a run game with their running backs. Their run game was almost entirely John Mateer carrying it for 20 times for 84 yards. They couldn't consistently establish a run game on the ground. And also, they didn't really hit very many big plays. They struggled a lot on offense to move the ball consistently, and they sort of just trusted that John Mateer would make big plays late in the game to win the game for them. Well, first of all, a lot of that was similar in the first half and through most of the third quarter also. In that, Oklahoma couldn't really run the ball. They ran the ball for 48 yards. That's it. And they didn't have a lot of big explosive pass plays. So, towards the end of the game, when Oklahoma, in the past few games, the games that they've won, sort of said, okay, but we have John Mateer. He's going to go out and he's going to make plays with his legs, right? He's going to save us and make plays with his arm, right? surely, I know we can't move the ball, but surely John Mateer is going to save us, right? We have John Mateer. Well, he didn't save y'all today, which was a bummer. John Mateer, of course, came into the game with a hand injury, didn't look 100% throwing the football. Mateer threw 3 interceptions. A couple of those interceptions were not good interceptions at all. He was 20 for 38, which is not what you want to see in terms of offensive consistency in the passing game. And he struggled mightily. Also, Texas got 5 sacks. Colin Simmons finally woke up and made an impact on this game. He had 2.5 sacks. So Texas was just too talented on defense, both in the secondary and getting to the quarterback with their edge rushers, for Oklahoma to rely on the offensive strategy of John Mateer is going to save us at the end of the day. That made sense to me also. And the only reason I thought maybe Oklahoma was going to win the game is because Mateer is such a winner and he could come through. But Texas's defense is just too talented for that to happen. Malik Muhammad had 2 interceptions. One of the interceptions was kind of thrown right to him in the end zone, but the other interception was just a fantastic play. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there was the interception, basically Oklahoma was running verticals on the right side, and Muhammad was on the outside vertical, and he sees John Mateer throw the seam. It wasn't really a seam because it was more to the right side to the slot receiver. But Muhammad was in cover 3, and he peels off his man and reads Mateer's eyes perfectly and goes and gets the interception. Awesome stuff for Muhammad. The talent on this Texas defense came through, and the Longhorns will find themselves ranked in the AP poll for sure after this week. They're very much alive in the SEC. They're very much where, I don't know if I would say they're where I think they would be at the beginning of the year, but they've got a whole lot in front of them. Honestly, they don't have that tough of an SEC schedule remaining, so we'll see if they can make the most of it. They do have to play Vanderbilt still. They have to play Texas A&M at home at the end of the year, and they also have to play Georgia on the road. That's going to be tough. But Texas is still very firmly, in my opinion, in playoff contention with this win. As far as Oklahoma goes, I still love this defense. I still think it's great. They have to find some consistency on offense if they want to get through their SEC gauntlet, because they got a lot of tough games ahead of them. Do I think they can still make the playoffs? Yes, just because of how good their defense is and because Mateer's a winner. But they've got to play at South Carolina soon. They've got to play at Alabama. They got to play Ole Miss. They got to play LSU. They've got some tough games ahead of them. So they're going to really, really need to start running the ball, to start finding explosive plays in the passing game. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? I'm not sure. And this is an Oklahoma team that I picked to make the playoffs at the beginning of the year. I thought John Mateer was going to win the Heisman at the beginning of the year. I correctly picked them to beat Michigan and Auburn, and correctly picked them to lose to Texas. So I think I have a pretty good read on this Oklahoma team. But you just have to see a little more offensive consistency out of a team that is going to make the playoffs. But we'll see. By the way, Texas's schedule for the rest of this year, I have it pulled up now. They've got Kentucky on the road, then they got Mississippi State on the road, then they got Vanderbilt at home. So in terms of SEC favorable schedules, this is definitely one of them. At least that 3-game stretch. Then they get their bye week, and then they play at Georgia. Sark still hasn't really been able to get the best of Kirby Smart yet. Maybe this is the moment. I don't think it is, but we'll see. Then they play Arkansas at home. Again, another favorable SEC team to play. And then they've got A&M. So, of course, it's not easy because it's the SEC, but very manageable for the Texas Longhorns to still come back and make the playoffs. Arch Manning made a couple big throws. He did that against Ohio State, from what I could see. He did it against Florida. But Texas did a great job. Steve Sarkisian did a great job of taking the pressure off of Arch Manning. And what I mean by that is he had time in the pocket, and he had a run game he could lean on, and his defense gave up 6 points. So Arch Manning did not have to go out there and throw for 400 yards to win this game, which should be the key to success for Texas moving forward, making it as easy for Arch Manning as possible. And they did in this game. He was good. 21 for 27, 166 yards and a touchdown. And doesn't jump out at you in terms of, wow, he was amazing this game, but he didn't turn the ball over, and he was consistent. So big win for Texas. They might tell you it's their biggest win of the year because it's over Oklahoma. It might be. So shout out the Longhorns, and Oklahoma's got some work to do on offense. Texas still does too, but big time win. I'm going to take a sip of water real quick because we got something sad to talk about here in the next game. All right. It was inevitable I had to talk about this game. I had to talk about this program. There had to be a moment in the show, this little 5 to 10 minute segment where I discussed the Penn State Nittany Lions losing 3 games in a row to start Big Ten play. Just to head to the beginning of this season for Penn State, you're ranked number 2 preseason in the AP poll. You're ranked number 2 preseason in the Stellar Shenanigans poll. Everyone thought you were going to contend in the Big Ten. Everyone thought you had a chance to win the Big Ten and even win the whole national championship. You were national championship contenders at the beginning of this year. Drew Aller was in Heisman conversations preseason. This defense was supposed to just be dominant. This defensive line was supposed to be one of the best in the country. And you start the year with 3 high school teams. Sure, you beat Nevada. Sure, you beat Florida International. And you beat Villanova. And then one of the most hyped games for 2025 comes around. Oregon comes to town, and you lose such an emotional, back-breaking game at home, at night, in your whiteout, in double overtime to the Ducks. But you looked not terrible. Drew Aller didn't look amazing. Obviously, they deserved to lose that game. But it was in double overtime. So you're saying to yourself, okay, we can build on this. We can still, find a way to make the playoffs. And then your worst nightmare happens. You go on the road and you lose to 0-4 UCLA. A team that a lot of people were saying might be the worst team in Power 4. A team that hadn't led a game all year. And you lose to them. And not only did you lose, but you didn't lead for a single second. They jumped all over you. You couldn't stop the run. And their transfer quarterback, who had been terrible, knocked your defense just on its head. And you thought you couldn't get any lower. And then you travel back home in front of your home crowd with all of their support. And you lose to Northwestern 22-21 in just a depressing game. I wasn't there. I'm so happy I wasn't there to witness this, but I cannot imagine being amongst the Penn State fans who were so hyped at the beginning of this year, who listened to so much pregame hype about this team, about their national title chances, all to see it just crash and burn in the most disgusting, ugly fire you've seen in a long time in college football. Penn State's 3-3. They're 0-3 in Big Ten play. They just lost to UCLA and Northwestern. Penn State's defensive line was supposed to be so good this year. Zane Durant, Denai Dennis Sutton, these guys were supposed to be game breakers. Not only did they allow UCLA to run the ball for over 260 yards against them, when they needed them the most against Northwestern, late in this game, when the Wildcats had the ball in the red zone, they were paper mache. This Penn State defensive line is not elite. It's not game-breaking. It's not anything special in the Big Ten. And this linebacker core that at the beginning of the year is headlined by Tony Rojas has no depth, because Tony Rojas going down has left a gaping hole in the middle of the field in terms of linebacker talent. This defense just got Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles just won a national championship with Ohio State, goes to Penn State, and just lost to UCLA and Northwestern. Drew Aller, your Heisman contending quarterback in the preseason, is out for the year. Your coach, your beloved multi-year coach who's been great for your program, is getting booed out of the stadium and is given the bird by some Penn State fans. This is tragic. This is hard to watch. This is one of the most beloved programs in college football. This is one of the best atmospheres in college football, one of the best fan bases in college football, and they are suffering. one of the worst seasons that I can remember in a long time in college football. So if you have thoughts and prayers to give them to your family, they deserve them. Give them to your friends, they deserve them. But just spare some for the Penn State fans, for James Franklin, for Drew Aller, this fan base, and just for the city of Happy Valley, because they need it. I want to say Penn State still has a chance to do something this year, but I think the soul has been just sort of sucked out of this Penn State team. They still have a lot of talent. They're not giving the ball to Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton. Nick Singleton is averaging like 3 yards a carry this year. He has been one of the most disappointing players in college football in 2025. They have no juice on offense. Trevor Pena has been great. Devontae Ross is who went off this game. He's been solid, but other than that, no help from the wide receivers. This is hard to watch. A lot of people are clamoring for James Franklin being fired. I think those people should try and remember all the good that James Franklin has brought to this Penn State program. But this is going to be a rough season for the Nittany Lions going forward. That's all I'll have to say. Congratulations to Northwestern for getting a huge win. They're 4-2 now. This is a Northwestern team that just got smoked by Oregon, and now they just beat Penn State. So crazy stuff. But hey, Northwestern beat UCLA, so at least there's that. We're going to move on because I don't really want to talk about this game anymore. It's sad, it's rough to talk about. So we're going to travel south and a little bit to the west, to the great state of Missouri, to the great city of Columbia, Missouri, which is now the premier Columbia in the SEC, with South Carolina being 2-4, I believe is their record right now. But the Alabama Crimson Tide traveled on the road to play a Missouri team that still hasn't played a road game, by the way. And the Crimson Tide improved their SEC record to 3-0. They're 5-1 on the year, and they narrowly defeat the Missouri Tigers 27-24. They win and cover the spread. Big time win for the Crimson Tide. This is one I thought they were going to lose. I picked Missouri to win this game. And it turns out I've been really bad at picking Alabama games this year. I picked them to beat Florida State. I was wrong on that. I picked them to lose to Georgia. Wrong on that. And lose to Missouri. And wrong on that. So clearly I don't have a very good read on this Alabama team. But the Tide have shown me a lot of things that I didn't think were possible with this team. Not just going into this game, but really the last few weeks. And first and foremost is this team's ability to sustain 13-plus play drives that just milk away clock. This team dominates time of possession. They have the last 3 weeks against Georgia, against Vanderbilt, and now against Missouri. And honestly, if you were to ask me if Alabama were to win the time of possession battle in those 3 games, I would say no. I'd say they go 0-3 because Georgia's run game is better than Alabama's. Vanderbilt literally lives to dominate time of possession, and Missouri has the best rushing attack in college football. And yet, Alabama had like 39 minutes of time of possession to Missouri's 21, which is just shocking going into this game. And that is really, really great to see in a football game because it doesn't just mean you're holding the ball for a while, which gives you more chances to score. It doesn't just mean that you're keeping the other team's offense off the field. If you have the ball for 39 minutes, it means you just have control over this football game. And if you have control over the football game, more likely than not, you're going to win the football game. And Alabama did this time. Something that Alabama has improved on a lot the last 2 weeks is running the football. Against Florida State, the rushing game, they just completely abandoned it. Against Wisconsin, their leading rusher was Ty Simpson with like 18 yards. They did not look like they could run the ball. And against Georgia, they tried, but they didn't have any explosive runs, and it didn't really look very good. And then against Vanderbilt, they had their first 100-yard rusher from a running back position since 2023. And now against Missouri, you ran the ball really, really well. Jan Miller looked great until he went down with an injury. Kevin Riley and Daniel Hill were both impactful through the run game. They ran the ball for 125 yards. Jan Miller had 20 carries for 85. And they're not breaking off huge runs, but they're just being consistent, which allows them to develop these long drives and control these football games. Ty Simpson is on time. He's on schedule. They don't play behind the sticks. He's patient. He has great knowledge of his pass protection schemes. And Alabama does not rely on big plays. That's what this team was last year. We have Jalen Milroe, who's really electric and really fast. We have Ryan Williams, who can make plays over the top, and we're just going to big play you to death. But this Alabama team doesn't really generate a lot of huge explosive plays, which again is not the scouting report because of how good these teams' receivers are, supposedly. But I mean, Jerry Bernard in this game, 3 catches for 20 yards. Ryan Williams, 0 catches for 0 yards. They're not generating explosive plays. They're leaning on the monotony of football, which is 3 yards on first down, 5 yards on second down, and then converting third and shorts. They were 9 for 18 on third and fourth downs. That's just what Ryan Grubb does. That's what this Ty Simpson mantra is all about, is being consistent and on time and on schedule and good on third down. Also, their linebackers played a lot better than they have the last few weeks. Specifically, Deontay Lawson. They stopped this Missouri run game for the most part. I mean, Missouri did run the ball for 163 yards, but Ahmad Hardy had 12 carries for 52 yards, which is so impressive if you look at how good he's been. He's averaging like over 120 yards a game, and Alabama just held him to 52. Their linebackers played way better than I thought they would. A lot of Missouri's outside run concepts weren't really clicking because of the pursuit angles that these linebackers were taking. And Alabama's interior defensive linemen, I think, are so good. LT Overton was amazing this game. Tim Keenan being back and healthy is really making an impact. There's a lot of things to be really proud about if you're an Alabama fan. Mostly controlling games and the rushing attack, and your linebackers improving. And then, of course, third and fourth downs are great with Ryan Grubb and Ty Simpson. But I do have a couple of questions still with Alabama that I would not think were the questions at all. That's the weird thing. Everything preseason, everything that I've seen the first few weeks of the year lead me to believe that what I just talked about, Alabama's ability to control games and their linebacker play, I thought those were the weaknesses. Those were the strengths today. The weaknesses, in my opinion, the weaknesses that I see in this team are with the secondary and the wide receivers, which are supposed to be the 2 position groups that Alabama is deepest at. And you might be saying, well, Robert, Missouri threw the ball for only 167 yards. Why are you having trouble with the secondary? Well, to be honest, Missouri didn't try to throw the ball very much until like the last drive of the game. And they just went down the field immediately and scored a touchdown in their 2-minute drill. They weren't even sweating out there. Damani Jackson, in my opinion, played another terrible game for the Alabama Crimson Tide. His effort out there didn't look great at all. And he got beat by a true freshman, Donovan Olugbodi, I think is how you say his name. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I probably did. But he got beat by this true freshman receiver, Donovan O, multiple times, which allowed Missouri to have a chance in this game. I remember against Georgia, Damani Jackson got cooked by Colby Young. So this Alabama secondary is not perfect. They have moments where they really struggle. And then these wide receivers, I remember in the Georgia game, in the first half, Georgia ran a lot of zone. They ran cover 3 for the most part, and then they ran cover 2 on short yardage situations. And Ty Simpson was able to sort of pick apart the zone. And then Georgia said, well, you know what we're going to try and do? I know we're afraid of these wide receivers. I know they're really good, but we're going to try and run man coverage. And it started working. I don't know if y'all remember how many points Alabama scored in the second half against Georgia. It was 0 because Georgia decided to run man coverage. Because they said, you know what, I don't think their wide receivers can beat our corners consistently one-on-one. And they were right. And Missouri in this game ran a lot of man coverage too, successfully, which I didn't think was possible. Despite a couple big plays, Latsier Brooks made a big play against man coverage at the end of the game on 4th and 8. But despite some of the big plays, Missouri succeeded in man coverage against these Alabama receivers, which is not supposed to happen. So, still got some question marks about Alabama, but the fact this is a game that they would totally have lost last year. Alabama's already won more SEC road games this year than they did all of last year. Kalen DeBoer seems to have this team ready to go for almost every game. We'll see if that remains the case the rest of the year, but the culture and the identity of this Alabama team is so much different than last year's team, in my opinion. I trust Alabama more a lot in the smaller games because of today's result. So I think this is a huge win for Alabama over a really good Missouri team. So hats off to the Crimson Tide. This Missouri team, by the way, I question Eli Drinkwitz's play calling a little bit. I don't know why Ahmad Hardy only got the ball 12 times. You should have handed it off to him nearly 30 times in this game based on how good he's been this year. There were a lot of successful run plays early in the game, too. I don't know why they just completely abandoned it. Really, you only had one explosive handoff to a running back, to Jamal Roberts for 39 yards. Other than that, the running game, you didn't really lean on it, which I thought they should. Eli Drinkwitz kind of hit the nail on the head after the first half in his interview. He said, I think we're trying to do too much. I think we're being too complicated. We just got to line up, call our plays that we like, and win football. And it's like they were trying to do too much on offense. And Beau Pribula, it was up and down for him. He made some good throws. He made some big plays, but he's not a guy that's going to knife up Alabama for 350 yards and win a game like that. And Missouri sort of played like that was what the case was going to be. So I was a little disappointed on that for Missouri's part. I think they're still a great team. I think their defensive ends, their edge rushers are still so good. Damon Wilson and Zion Young both had sacks this game. They were great. One of those sacks was a forced fumble, which gave Missouri pretty much a touchdown. I think maybe they had a little bit of jitters in this game. I think that's why this is the biggest game they played all year. And they sort of over-prepared in a way, which is weird, but they kind of did. And they were also 1 of 10 on third down, which is such a play caller quarterback stat line. And that sort of sums up the game for Missouri's offense being 1 for 10 on third down. So Alabama dominated third downs again. They looked more consistent. They dominated time of possession, and they got another big SEC win on the road. I'm going to take another quick sip of water because we got a lot to talk about with this next game. So I'm just going to take a quick break. All right. Heading east again from the great state of Missouri to the great state of Alabama, where the oldest rivalry in the South took place once again in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Georgia had won 8 in a row going into this game against Auburn, and they find their 9th win in a row in this rivalry. They take down Auburn 20-10. They scored 20 unanswered points in this game to beat the Auburn Tigers. Now, the story of this game is the officiating. Again, just like it was against Oklahoma, the story of this game was the refs. Auburn fans are really frustrated with the refs. A lot of college football fans, I think, are really frustrated with the refs in this game. Just a quick PSA. I'm going to give a PSA about the refs. In the Oklahoma game, they admitted they were wrong about a call. This game against Georgia, yes, there were some bad calls. I don't think that complaining about officiating in a game and saying we lost because of the refs is the right thing to do. Because bad officiating, whether you want to believe this or not, bad officiating is part of football. The refs are not perfect. The refs are really good, but they're not perfect. It's going to happen. You can't... Auburn had -1 yards rushing in the second half. Auburn had 19 total yards of offense in the second half. That is not because of the refs. That's because Georgia dominated you in the second half. So, did the refs maybe make some questionable calls? Yes. But that's not the number one reason that you lost the game. And it's never the number one reason why anyone ever loses a game in the history of football. I mean, even the Saints, if you look at the Saints, when they lost on the no call to the Rams, egregiously bad call. Worst call in football history, in my opinion. And you could say if the refs made the right call there, the Saints would have won. And you're not wrong. But the Saints could have played a better football game. They could have had the lead going into that moment by a lot more. They could have put themselves in a better situation. And they also could have won the game in overtime. They could have blocked Dante Fowler Jr. and not thrown an interception, and Greg Zuerlein would have had the opportunity at a 57-yard field goal to win the game. So that's just my quick PSA on officiating. I think there were a lot of calls in this game. The one on the goal line, obviously, the one that was called a fumble, could have been a touchdown. The worst thing I saw in this game, And I hate that the number one thing I'm talking about with a big primetime SEC rivalry football game is officiating. That is a crime. But the worst thing I saw in this game was when Kirby Smart ran up to an official to call a timeout. He was literally going like this to call a timeout. If you're listening on podcast, he was making the timeout signal with his hands, clear as day. And the refs go, okay, yeah, timeout. And then Kirby runs up to him and he says, no, I was clapping. I wasn't calling a timeout. Kirby, you were clearly calling a timeout. There's no Georgia fan that can convince me that Kirby Smart was not calling a timeout there. It was clear as day. You were not clapping, Kirby Smart. You were calling a timeout, and then you lied to the ref. And not only lied, but fervently convinced him that you were clapping just so that you didn't lose your second timeout. I thought that was really low character. I thought it was really... And guess what? Georgia finished the game with one timeout remaining, so it literally didn't even matter. But I just thought that was really low-hanging fruit from Kirby Smart. That really annoyed me. That really rubbed me the wrong way. Georgia missed a field goal right after that. I kind of thought that was warranted. That was deserved because that was really, really low, really fishy from Kirby Smart. I really didn't like that. But let's get into the actual game because a lot of stuff happened in this game. This was really a tale of two halves. 100% was. Auburn just dominated the first half. All credit to Hugh Freeze in that manner. He came out with a brilliant script. So that's like the first 3 drives to start a football game are considered the script. And Hugh Freeze's was awesome. Long, grueling drives. Jackson Arnold didn't have to do that much down the field. Of course, they didn't want to because Jackson Arnold can't do very much down the field. But they ran the ball really well. They ran the ball for like 140 yards in the first half. A lot of good RPOs. They didn't held the ball for very long at all. So hats off to Hugh Freeze with the play calling and the execution of the offensive line and these running backs. They were great. And then Georgia on offense, I think they were kind of shocked by how much zone coverage Auburn ran in the first half. Basically, what Auburn was able to do is sit in zone and yet still stop Georgia from running the ball. I mean, Auburn's front is so good. They're so big and they're so good at run stopping that they don't need to stack the box or blitz to stop the run, and they did that in this game. And Gunnar Stockton had to beat the zone coverage, and he just sort of seemed uncomfortable, and he didn't. Fast forward to the second half, because I don't even want to talk about the last 2 minutes of this first half because it was disgusting. It was bad football. It wasn't fun to watch. So many penalties. The refs really just kind of... It was the refs for the last 2 minutes of the game. And, I mean, it's not just the refs making random calls. Auburn had a lot of penalties. It was just sloppy football. It was terrible to watch. But the second half, Georgia flipped the switch. They made a lot of adjustments on offense. On defense, they really stacked the box. What they did is they said, you know what? Jackson Arnold and Auburn's offense is beating us, but Jackson Arnold's arm isn't beating us, so let's make his arm beat us. So they blitzed a lot, they ran a lot more man coverage, and they QB spied. And they basically said, you know what, Jackson Arnold? If you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us with your arm. And Arnold couldn't. They did a fabulous job QB spying. Arnold didn't really have any rushing yards at all in the second half. And then they also did a great job with their blitzes and everything else. So great adjustments from Kirby Smart in the second half. Obviously, he's like one of the best. He's the best coach in college football and the best halftime adjuster in college football. And then offensively, Gunnar Stockton sort of finally was able to break down Auburn's zone coverage. They sort of relied a lot of short passes and then run after catch. Colby Young was great in this game. Zachariah Branch was great in this game. Noah Thomas made a big catch. So Georgia's skill position players really did a great job in this game. Same with the running backs. They were phenomenal. Big win for the Dogs. But Georgia, man, they've got to stop coming out just slow in the first half. There's already been 3 times this year where they have just gotten absolutely punched in the face defensively in the first half of a football game. I mean, Tennessee scored 21 points in the blink of an eye to start the game back in week 3. In week 5, Alabama, 24 in the first half. They had your number to start the game. And then against Auburn, you can argue, should have been up 17-0 at halftime. So, Georgia, you have to stop getting punched in the mouth to start football games. You cannot just keep relying on these wild, wacky ways to win games where you have to come back and score 21 answered on the road in a hostile environment to win football games. It's not going to work. It could work to get to the playoffs, but it's not going to work every time in the playoffs. You're going to have to be better in the first half. I think a lot of that blame has to go on Mike Bobo for just having no game plan in terms of offense to start a game. The more I watch Georgia football, the more I really don't like Mike Bobo, who's the offensive coordinator for the Dogs, if you're not aware. I just hate his play calling. He doesn't have a good script when he goes out there. I don't see it from Mike Bobo. It's a lot of screen passes and then outside zone. It's not creative to me, and it's not good football. Let's see what else I got. I think hats off to Hugh Freeze, by the way. I really feel bad for the guy. He's doing all he can out there. He's doing a great job play calling. The defense is great. He's got the crowd going. The last 3 games that he lost, those are such tough games. If you give anyone in the country the 3 games stretch that Auburn's had, with on the road at Oklahoma, on the road at A&M, and then at home against the Georgia Bulldogs, not a lot of teams are competing the way Auburn has been able to compete in those games. Obviously, haven't scored more than 17 points in any of those games. But a lot of that is just on Jackson Arnold not having any threat downfield of a passing attack. So I don't think Hugh Freeze deserves to be fired. I really think he's doing all that he can out there. I think Auburn really is a quarterback away from being a team that can make noise in the SEC. Unfortunately, they don't have the quarterback this year. It's that simple, in my opinion. Moving on from the Auburn game, out west to another Big Ten matchup, the last full game we're going to talk about on the Instant Reactions pod. The USC Trojans hosted the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan had to travel all the way from Ann Arbor all the way over to LA. And they lose 31-13 at the hands of Lincoln Riley, at the hands of Jane Mayava, and at the hands of this USC offense. A lot of people might be surprised. It's number 15 ranked Michigan. It's the Michigan Wolverines. And they're going on the road to play USC. USC, a team that is unranked. A team that, has just decreased and decreased and decreased, and whose record has gotten worse and worse and worse over the tenure of Lincoln Riley. Wow, this is shocking. This is a big result. How did Michigan lose this game? Well, I don't think it's as shocking as you may think. USC was actually favored in this game. I actually picked USC to win this game. And I'm not surprised that USC won this game in the way that they did. USC's offense is the closest thing to a perfect offense that I have seen in college football this season. It's so good. Every facet of the game. They ran the ball so well in this game. If you told me that USC would run the ball for over 200 yards against Michigan, I would not have believed you, because Michigan has a lot of NFL talented dudes in their front seven. And yet, USC ran the ball really well. With, by the way, Wayman Jordan, their number 1 running back, he went out with an injury, I think in the second quarter, and they were still able to run it for over 200 yards. I can't remember the name of their backup running back that did so well this game, and my ESPN app is being really slow, so bear with me for a couple seconds while I'm dealing with the technology. This offensive line, by the way, is so impressive from USC. Their ability to run block so well. When you see multiple running backs having huge games, multiple running backs having a lot of success within an offense, a lot of times you have to give credit to the offensive line. Golly, my ESPN app is just being terrible right now. Really not a help at all. Sorry. Anyway, USC offensive line, great there. Also great in pass protection. Michigan's got some dudes that can rush the passer, and they were really limited in this game. King Miller, that's his name. 18 carries, 151 yards, and a touchdown for USC for King Miller, second running back. He only had 101 yards this season going into this game, and he kind of exploded. Jay Mayava was great. He had 265 yards, 2 touchdowns. The one interception was a bad interception. He rolled out. He should have just thrown it away, threw it into traffic, and he was intercepted. It was really bad. But what I mean by a perfect offense, literally every facet of this offense is awesome. Jaden Mayava is so good. He might be the most consistent quarterback that I've seen in college football this year, other than Ty Simpson, maybe Fernando Mendoza. But he's great. He fits in so well in this Lincoln Riley system. And running back, Wayman Jordan and now King Miller, both great guys. They both showed they can run for over 150 yards a game. Receiving, my goodness, they might have the best receiver in college football. Makai Lemon, guys. If you don't know Makai Lemon, go watch some tape. That dude is awesome. He's so good. And not only do they have him, he's shifty, he's fast, he can route run like nobody's business. They also have a big red zone threat in Ja'Cory Lane. That dude makes plays. He had 12 touchdowns last year. He's a little banged up to start the year, but he is a red zone threat. He can make so many great plays. And this offensive line is so awesome also. So how did USC lose to Illinois if they have such a good team? To me, the answer is poor tackling. And they really cleaned that up against Michigan. Michigan, they were without Justice Haynes for part of this game. But USC still held them to, my ESPN app will stop tweaking out. They still held them to 109 yards rushing, which is so impressive. Looking at how well Michigan's been able to run the ball this year, the fact that USC was able to tackle well enough to hold them to 109 yards is awesome. Frankly, I didn't see. I had a quad box going tonight, so I wasn't giving 100% of my attention to every game. But I did not see any missed tackles in the secondary against wide receivers by USC. And I might have not seen one, but from what I could see, against Illinois, I felt like I was seeing them every play. But against Michigan, I didn't see it. So great job tackling for USC. I think they're still great, and they have such a fun game. The Notre Dame USC game is going to be so much fun next week. Both of those offenses are so good. I have questions about both of those defenses, so I think it's going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be close. It's in South Bend. That game is going to be so much fun. It's a night game, too. It's going on while I'll maybe be at the Alabama-Tennessee game. But we'll see. I think that game is going to be awesome. So, huge win for USC. Not surprised. I think they are the fourth best team in the Big Ten. They might even be able to contend. I think they can contend with any team in the Big Ten. So I really like this USC team. I think this is the best USC team that Lincoln Riley's had in a while. So hats off to the Trojans. Big time win. Another big result in the SEC that I'll have to touch on. Texas A&M 34, Florida 17. Florida's a great football team. They've got a great defense. They've been able to stop the run in a lot of these games. A&M just flipped that right on its head. A&M just casually ran the ball for 183 yards. Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens just stiff-arming Florida Gators to the ground like they're rag dolls. Marcel Reed finally is making really good down-the-field throws. He had an interception in this game. He's not perfect in this game. I still don't really trust Marcel Reed as a quarterback to play great, but he showed really good flashes today that he can make big plays in big moments. I still believe that's true with Marcel Reed. These wide receivers are so good. That's the thing about Marcel Reed. His offensive line is so awesome in that he can sit back. And by the way, Florida's defensive line just ate up Texas last week. Texas couldn't run the ball, and Florida was in the backfield all game long. Arch Manning had just no pocket. And then Florida plays A&M, and A&M runs the ball for 183 yards. Marcel Reed gets sacked once, and he threw the ball, I think, 30-plus times. So this Texas A&M offensive line is so good. Marcel Reed can lean on that. He can lean on the run game, and his receivers are so good after the catch. You can say what you want about the route running of Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver and Terry Bussey, but these guys, once they get the ball on screen passes, on slants, whatever it is, they are so good after the catch. So it's so nice as a quarterback to have all those luxuries of a great offensive line, a great run game, and receivers that can make plays after the catch. And that's what A&M has. This offense is dynamic because of those things. And then this A&M defense, still, the middle of their defense, their linebackers and their defensive line are so good. They can stop the run so well. It's so hard to throw over the middle against these guys. And then, and we saw that from the stat line of this game, Texas got shredded by Florida's run game. Florida ran the ball for only like 60 yards in this game. I don't know the exact stat because ESPN app is literally falling apart before us. Them and Penn State are just the epitome of falling apart. So I'm not even going to use the iPad right now because it's failing me. That's the worst thing about electronics, man. Notebooks, paper and pencil, these things never fail you. These things are for eternity. But anyway, this Texas defense, or this A&M defense rather, stopped the run against Florida really, really well. Jaden Ball is a great player, and A&M really negated a lot of what they were trying to do. They also took away Dallas Wilson. This is what A&M's defense does. They load the box and they stop the run, and then they bracket your best X receiver and they make your other receivers make plays. And Dallas Wilson, I think, had like 3 catches for 20 yards and a touchdown in this game. The touchdown grab was awesome. It was in the red zone. He made a great play on a good throw by DJ Lagway. But A&M did a great job taking him away. That's part of what Mike Elko's defenses do. But I will say that leaves a lot of the times your wide receiver 2 in man coverage, and A&M's okay with that. They're saying if your wide receiver 2 wants to beat us, then we'll let him beat us. And it was Vernell Brown, and he did make a lot of great plays. Brown and Lagway were really in cahoots this game, which is good to see. Lagway had one of his best games, didn't turn the ball over, had 247 yards, I think, and a couple touchdowns. So this Florida offense, this Florida team, I still think is really good. I mean, they literally just had to play 4 top 10 teams in a row, back to back to back to back, 4 top 10 teams, and they went 1-3. So pick a team in college football, and tell me that they have to play 4 straight top 10 teams. Odds are they're going 0-4 because most teams in college football aren't top 10. So Florida, this is a really tough stretch. They still have to play Ole Miss on the road, but I mean, your schedule, you still play Ole Miss, you have to play Tennessee, but you get Mississippi State, you get Florida State, you get some easier opponents. So I think that I still like Billy Napier. I still wouldn't fire him. I still think he hangs around, which is crazy. But big win for A&M. A&M still looks really, really good. I've got A&M in the playoffs. I still believe that. But they got to start winning on the road. We know A&M's good at home. Last year, they only lost at home to Texas. We know they're good at home, but I think they've only lost once under Mike Elko at home. Can they win on the road? They got to go. They play at Texas later in the year. They got to go at Missouri. They just have some tough road games that they're going to have to take care of. So we'll see if they can win those. That's the question. Other notable things that went on this college football week. My favorite game this week, my favorite moment of week 7 of college football came in Philadelphia, came in the Eagles Stadium, a game between the Temple Owls and the Navy Midshipmen. Now you might say, why is this your biggest moment, bro? It's Temple and Navy. What are we talking about? Navy was 5-0 going into this game. Navy is my pick to make the playoffs from the group of 5. And Navy was losing. They were down 31-24. And actually no, it was tied. It was tied 24-24. And Temple scores with a minute left, which was honestly ideal because Navy only had 1 timeout. It would have been worse if Temple had not scored the touchdown, ran off more clock and kicked a field goal, but they scored with a minute left, which gave Blake Horvath and this Navy offense a chance. And they worked it to midfield. And this Navy offense is not a we're going to beat you over the top type offense. I know they threw the ball for 346 against Air Force last week, but their bread and butter is the run game. So Navy works their way to midfield. And when you think that they're not going to score a touchdown, it's Navy. They can't go down the field in a 2-minute drill. Blake Horvath takes the snap, they pull a guard, and the river parts. The Red Sea just split in half. And Blake Horvath runs straight up the middle, 50 yards for a touchdown. It was so epic. I loved it so much. Right down that Eagles logo, through the heart of the Temple defense to score the tying touchdown. And you're like, okay, Navy, you're gonna tie the game with an extra point, and we're gonna go to overtime. It's gonna be awesome. But that's not Navy football, folks. That's not what our country does. If you're a proud, red-blooded American, you don't want your Navy taking an extra point and sending it to overtime. You want your Navy, you want your armed forces going for 2 and going for the win. And that's what Navy did, and they got it. And they got it in an awesome way. Horvath stiff arms, he's not really stiff arming. He's getting tackled by a Temple defensive lineman as he's falling to the ground, throws it to his fullback, Alex Teska, who makes the game-winning catch to win the game. Awesome stuff. Navy wins 32-31. They stay undefeated. They're 6-0. They're bowl eligible They're tied for first place in the American Conference. Huge. Another awesome game. UNLV beat Air Force. UNLV is still undefeated. They're 6-0, 51-48. They win on a missed field goal from Arizona Air Force as time expired. So awesome game. Also, Nebraska-Maryland was a great game too. 2:30 window. Two one-loss teams fighting to remain relevant in the Big Ten. And Dylan Raiola leads a game-winning drive. They score with under a minute left. Dan Key with a one-handed catch to give Nebraska the win. These games are under-the-radar games. They're not on ABC. They're not between your Alabamas and your Georgias and your Auburns and your highest, paid watched teams in the world. But it's great college football. The Big 12 is it's Texas Tech and it's chaos underneath. Arizona State was without Sam Leavitt, and they just got smacked by Utah. I was wrong about Arizona State. I was wrong about Utah. I'm formally apologizing to Devon Dampier, to Kyle Whittingham, and this Utah staff. Utah looks for real. I know it was rainy. I know that Arizona State had their backup quarterback in, but you still won the game 42-10. Really impressive stuff. TCU just lost to Kansas State. BYU won in overtime, a game they should have lost to Arizona, but they somehow gritted one out to win. They're undefeated. Texas Tech looks amazing. But a lot of chaos. Iowa State just lost again. Cincinnati won again, so the Big 12 is all over the place. Florida State has lost 8 straight ACC games. Wow, there's a lot of noise outside my apartment right now. But anyway, Florida State and Mike Norvell have lost 8 straight ACC games. They've lost 4 in a row to ACC opponents at home. If they hadn't beaten Alabama at the beginning of the year, Mike Norvell would be fired immediately, in my opinion. They've lost their first 3 games in ACC play to Virginia, Miami, and now Pittsburgh without Eli Holstein. So this is a debacle. They're 3-3. They're going to fall out of the rankings. Any relevancy that they had after beating Alabama pretty much seems to be gone. I think people are now writing that off as a one-off. It still happened, and it's important of us to acknowledge that it still happened. But this Florida State team does not seem alive. They seem dead. UCLA just won again. They smacked Michigan State, and this time against Penn State, it was sort of Nico carrying the team. But this time they ran the ball for over 200 yards, and Nico only ran the ball for 6 yards. So it was the rest of the team. The defense played phenomenal. They held Michigan State to like 50 yards rushing. So UCLA, the team around Nico, dominated this game. No one wants to play UCLA right now. They're looking really, really good. And Tennessee beats Arkansas 34-31 in an awesome game, which sets up what could be a top 10 matchup in Tuscaloosa between the Volunteers and the Crimson Tide. Should be an awesome game. But that's all that I got for Week 7 Instant Reactions. It was a fun one to film. It always is. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for loving the sport of college football enough to hear my talk about it. I hope you all have a great weekend. I hope you have a great week. Always know that God loves you. He's here for you. Whatever you do, no matter where you are or where you've been, God will still love you. So just be that light to someone else in your life. Make somebody smile. Just try and leave people better than you found them. If you take one thing from this show, it's that. It's that you're a child of God and He loves you. So with that, God bless. Thanks for watching. Have a great week and look forward to Week 8 of college football. Next episode will be my top 25 rankings, and I can't wait to film that one. So God bless, folks. We'll see you later.